Was doing the regular process of the figure drawing, because the one I did last time, I did not do the outline, was because I was asking students to feel, the hatching technique. But of course, we still needed to follow with the regular process from outlining, and then shading, and then details. So this work I will do a conventional process. So it's more like a value drawing. So for catching the lighting function, so you saw I do the shading just for the dark area, and it's very important to find this line and this area and this area, but probably this area is easier for most people. I feel many students are very much feel comfortable to draw the line like this or the line like this, but it's not so much comfortable for them to draw the line like this, especially to draw them like the whole object with the core line. So sometimes it's harder for them to feel that actually this line needed to be continue and needed to all the way to from one end to another end. And also it's harder for them to see that the core line actually switching from sometimes from very here, like here, very small area to sometimes it's a bigger area. See this, okay? And sometimes the core line could be very subtle, so we need to draw some very soft transmission shading, right? And sometimes it's a very clear edge. So the soft edge and the hard edge, they're always switching, but you need to see the whole thing. It's not easy for most of students. And some students, like I said, oh, you catch the shadow, and they will keep on work on the outline, okay, but not actually work on the core of the shadow. So what I'm talking about is that for this step, maybe it's too early for me to do like this, but I just wanted to buy the way to teach, so I don't mind, it's harder for me to draw or not. So it's important to find the contrast, and sometimes the most dark part is here instead of here. This is very important. It's very hard to let student to understand or either bold enough to do like this process. Another situation like the hip part, when you look at the photo, maybe you really feel like it's the subtlety not really like this, but you need to analyze and feel that actually the core line is like this. Okay, it really depends on the lighting function, but in many cases it's very hard for students to find the very big relation and contrasted. Okay, so contrast the hair instead of contrast the hair. So of course the hair has some cast the shadow, it is contrast. But the more important is to find these areas more contrast. It's very hard for a student to exaggerate. So yeah, I also for this part, yeah, we can see there's some cast shadow could be very dark. Yeah, this is something we needed to very much courage to do, to find this very sharp and a very contrasted impression. Yeah, so it's like impression. And also, because I'm not actually drawing, so I'm talking, and also needed to find this very subtle gradation from light to dark, and we need to have shading, and the hatching needed to somehow follow with the structure or cross contour line. Cross contour line means assume there's a cut, a profile cut, and you can find the line would look like. If the line situation depends on one is the angle, what's the direction to cut, another it depends on the structure itself. So when we draw, we need to have this kind of imagination to find the cross contour line for shading. So like this part is too light, of course, because the core is to go over here. So sometimes it's a super subtlety. So when you look at a photo, of course, if you have patience, you can copy a photo, but not necessarily helps you to be smart. So you have to understand what's going on and why, which part you need to do most contrast to find this kind of value relation. So another thing is when we drawing something dark part, if I draw here in future, later of the demonstration, I will give it very soft graduation, so it's very soft and round. You can see the lighten function. It's this part like a sphere. But another side here, when I drawing this, this is a cast shadow. Sometimes for cast shadow, it looks more flat and even. So because the cast shadow basically they reduce these details and make it more flat and more transparent. So, but the edge of the cast shadow depends on one's the lighten function, also depends on the surface of the object. So like this thigh part is a round situation, so this cast shadow will not that much clear, but it's more like you need to care this is round. So it's a combination of our core, its own core, probably is here. It's a round, and you see the core, and also a cast shadow. So we combined together. So in this case, this part we need to give it more shadow to show that it's like a cylinder. It's a round, and also give it some gradation from light to dark. and also the cast shadow. So it's like a combination. So when you draw, you can find there are lots of little small details. Look at this part. So I can see the core, because this picture, the lighting is very soft. It's not a strong lighting, so sometimes the core can be pretty soft. But it still needed you to find this core instead of just the outline. It's a very common problem for most of students. They used to easy to find the line, contour line, existing contour lines, which is easier for them to find based on their habits, but not easy for them to find the structure inside of the object. So this is something you need to take care. If you really don't understand what does it mean, you need to keep on asking me why, what's that. That will improve your actual understanding. So yeah, so I mostly I completed this part for this lighting function stuff, and also we draw the neat part. Guess this part is under the neat part. You can see the little shadow. But sometimes when we draw this, we need to compare it with the arm. So because this arm is more in front of it, so we need to make sure this in future, at least in future, will give it more contrast and backside stuff. So in this photo, the little lighten part here, I will use eraser to make it a little lighter, but it's not so much a big deal anymore because for the big relation, it's in the shades. So you can use eraser to find the very little details. And for this part is the cast shadow from the arm part. And then, okay, I look into the photo. I found I had little mistake. I'll make the recap a little bit longer. Yeah, sometimes when we do drawing, we can outline a little bit structurally. So it's not like this for knee part. For elbow, it's kind of bony structural area. Sometimes we need to know how to use the line to address that relation. It's better than just to keep on shading. Of course, only the shading. If you only use the shading, that also works. But sometimes it's spend too much time. It's not so much efficient. So I really believe that line technique is a very essential technique for the drawing. Okay, so I did this part. Sometimes we can draw whatever. Where to start? I started from here when I was still talking. So I go here to head is okay. From face to body is okay. That doesn't matter where you started to draw. But sometimes if you consider this is the major area, I would recommend that you start from your major area or your key area of the work. That will easy to have your work contrasted, and you're for yourself also more confident to understand the situation of the process. So that's good. So now I'm working on the area of the shoulder girdle area, and starting from the shoulder, and sometimes the shoulder, the same situation. This part is the most bony and contrast, and lots of students only see, oh, here is something dark, but they not really understand. So why this part need to be dark, but actually it need more contrast. So it's not just smudging it into like a dark area, but it need more pop out. So you need to use the shading structurally to draw this bone and the muscle, so that you can have this area realistically and also solid looking and sticking out. See, it's sticking out shoulder. It's not just a soft bar, there's some because it's a foreshortened of the shoulder. So most of things they compress together. So you need to put it pretty subtle. And also it's connecting to the scapula and also to the neck part. So very small area. There are lots of subtle details existing. So in your work, you needed to point out that relation, and also the muscle. Yeah, the muscle for the neck also there. Although for female it's not so obvious, but when you do the shading, you need to tell that kind of understanding. Yeah, I can say that when you understand the structure, your drawing will feel more meaningful. If you don't understand the structure, your drawing is more like just a copy of the phenomenon. So yeah, so it's one knowledgeable work, need more understanding from the artist. Yeah, so we need to do your drawing knowledgeable instead of just a copy of the photo. So it's pretty important. But of course, the practicing is most important. So also, yeah, when we draw this arm, you need to compare the contrast with here, this arm. This one will be less contrasted. So 1, 2, 3, and this is the third level, and the second level is the facial part, and the third is this arm. Okay, the second level also the knee part. So it's a very compressed space. You need to see this difference, in the very small distance. You need to enlarge that difference so that your work can see the depths. Yeah, it's pretty important. So now I'm going to work on the facial part. Maybe take a while for details. Some people complain that they see my drawing like just a little movement of the hand, and then when I move away my hand, the work is done, so they still don't know what's happened. Yeah, sometimes it's really subtlety when you draw. It's not a big movement because the little details is only existing in very small distance. There are lots of things happened, so that's why for some detail thing, everything's in your hand. It's between your fingers. Yeah, it's just a little bit. Sometimes even you draw a little too much, longer time or whatever, you feel like that's already too much. So it's everything is very subtle. So I cannot demonstrate that from in front of the lens because it's really too small. Yeah, maybe maybe in future there's some way to catch that very small movement, but I don't think it's necessary when you really understand. When you practice more, you will start to understand. So yes, also like a facial. The not means I'm drawing super small hatching or small detail line. What's more important is just that very simplified hatching line to catch the shape, and also the details already there, so I won't do too much work on the facial part, because this work is mostly based on the whole body. So but you need to have idea about your most contrasted part, and then your most so line need to be turned around to that side. Although you are doing something detail, but everything is about the space. So it's not just the shape, also about the space. So when your feeling of the space is right, so everything you draw is detail. Yeah, I mean, detail is a kind of feeling instead of detail, just a more hard work. So understand this kind of logic. So yeah, I don't not really do so much on this hair part, and you don't have to line by line to draw this hair, but it's important for you to understand. This part is round, so you shouldn't be too contrasted than this. So we need to make the different level of the contrast in a small area, so you can see the subtlety. This is the subtlety of the work, right? So this part, the hair, since it's inside of the light part, so sometimes somehow we could do a little more detail line, because it's inside of light part. It could be more obvious and contrasted. And this part, why I do darker, is because it's very much hit the structure of the neck, the back side of the neck. So it's also somehow important. So that's why I make it a little darker. So yeah, so this serves for the lighting function. So now I make for my own style, I don't so much like heavy duty shading, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I suppose to do something more value function, more lighting function stuff. So that's why I'm doing more shading now. Okay, but you know that for the artwork itself, it's already tell you. The work is already tell you this kind of relation. But yeah, anyway, the purpose of it is just to show you, regular drawing process. That's why. Yeah. So maybe the way I'm drawing is still a little bit too simplified. I don't know. Sometimes people say that when they look at my work, feel like too easy. I don't know, too easy or whatever, easy or too simplified. But you cannot say it's too simple. But this is feel like too summarized, and it feel like the actually drawing is not that easy at all. Yeah, maybe sometimes it's too early for me to hit that point. So yeah, now you see the difference between here to there. You already see that kind of relation. darkness to lighter, the graduation already developed, so that for the lighting function is already done for that. So now I work on most far away arm. This arm, but it's a little bit smaller because of the foreshortening. So sometimes you don't have to erase very clean, but you can erase a little bit if you feel the shape is not accurate. So for my own style, I would like to leave this line there. Don't have to everything like a single, make it to a very accurate single contour outline, whatever. But for this work, I think this level of the details is really enough. Okay, so now I will work more on this hand because it's obviously needed more pop out, more detailed. I'll check the camera if it's still working. Okay. Okay, I use a mechanical pencil, but I sharpened it, so the tip is a little more, more pointy than the usual. Yeah, it's usually people use it for sketching. So I work on the hand. So draw detail a little bit. Yeah, you see that I'm much more catching this in the middle, the core area. Yeah, I did this part when I was talking. So it's important that when you do the shading, try to connect them each other so you feel it's more organic. Some students draw this is this, there is there. They're not really connecting and cannot see the logic or cause consequence between each other, so that their work looks like little pitch, part by part. That's not so good. So it's important to see that. Sometimes even I was doing this, but I needed to check this to make sure this is okay, right? So now I work on the hand. So I think it's important to find the shading direction and the nickel and the finger. Then go to detail. Detail. I will erase this a little bit. So let's see the palm a little round because it's the palm backside. You see that? So then I work on nickel and finger. Erase this. Make it more skinnier. Yeah, when beginning sketching process, not necessarily everything is very super accurate, so you can do it a little bit, erase a little bit. Yeah, that's why sometimes I don't like the process like this, because I have to always accurate, always correcting. But for detail drawing, sometimes it's already taken care, so you don't have to redo anything. Like this way, sometimes we do need to redo some part. And this finger is inside of the shade, so we make it more blurry. And also, by the way, we can cast the shadow of the finger, and also that side you can see slightly the thumb in the shade. So, okay, so this is pretty enough for details, unless you are doing a super detailed drawing. So for this is detail enough. The point is, you need to see, if you draw knuckles, you need to see the difference, contrast, so you can compare each other's, this much contrasted, this is less, and this is a more or less contrast. So also fingers, you see this is a more contrast, and then less, and this is less. So you see this is more sticking out. So even just several, even just not pretty sketchy detail, the point is not it's so much detailed information, but you need to compare them in the spatial way. So it's more important than just the patience, but you need a more understanding. You need understanding of the object. Okay, now I feel it's pretty necessary to make the whole line, or either the whole dark area darker for the arm, so that the more pull out in front of the cave, right? So of course in the cave you can see shading, but basically it's more weak, not so strong like the arm anymore. So you need to compare this and this ankle and the wrist to see which one more contrasted. So yeah, the difficulty is not how many stuff you can draw, but it's more about how do you draw, or what's the level of the contrast to draw. So like I draw this, it's more clear than this, but it's compared with this is more clear. So in case sometimes we can make this line more darker, more contrasted, so you can see this line quality elevation. So of course we can draw detail, of course, but this problem is everything you draw detail, you needed to compare their relation. So I'm drawing the toes detail, but then you need to compare with the arm to make sure it's not over. Yeah, you can draw toes, of course, but then you need to compare. So we draw the cave, because I did this darker, so now we can draw the cave a little more. Compare with this arm, the cave is more contrasted. So you see this relation is developed okay. Now I work on this side part. So this part could be a little more darker. Yeah, so this is enough. If you feel like this part too much pop out, give it a little more shading, you see, like this way. That will reduce the contrast. So make sure it's behind this cave, right? So it's not existing duration on my photo, but I would do like this because it's my understanding of the status of that part. So fold for the neck. Okay, so now I draw this knee part, and then I draw the calf a little more straight. So I erase a little bit, but I will not erase very much because this hand it need to turn around. It's not a flat thing. So if I not drawing too much shading, I would keep this kind of quality to make it more feel like it's more round. This part is the muscle, can enhance that relation a little bit. But for this part, sometimes I can have this like this. So it's more round. Okay, so this leg. I will not do too detailed for this foot because compare with this part, this is more like a key. So don't do detail everywhere. So you can do soft way to make sure their relation is accurate. So an accurate relation is more important than more detailed information. So it doesn't matter how detailed is your thing, your object, but more important is your idea is correct. So I will not do too much detail here. Cast the shadow. So now I go back to the body part. So, like I said, notice that the hip part is very round, and I give it more soft tones, half tones, give them more soft shading. It's good. And the hip, I can redo the line. Yeah. Because it's a very much light, the lights go directly cast on it, so I would make a very light line and a very much accurate and a light line for this part. But that's enough, unless we do background, but without the background, this line quality is good. So here some shading. Actually also can address the texture of the skin a little bit. Yeah, you notice that I keep on work on this part instead of just two lines. So this part needed lots of shading because you need to consider the thigh part. It's like a barrel. Very important. You can see the core area pop out instead of a flat. This part is very easy to draw to flat. This is a common part. Now I outline the arm again. This part, you know why? Because it's more in front of that. So I draw detail for the arm. Yes, of course, sometimes the drawing with talking is not so easy because when we draw, not think so much. Not everything you need to explain. It's more from very natural feeling. But as a method, it's good to talk to for you to understand why I do like this. So, okay, so I'm doing the shading for the arm. I that's the most easy way to do the shading, get a graduation from light to dark. When you're shading, it's important to have the line like, so one side lighter, one side a little darker. So that helps you to create the graduation. If you draw this way, you can draw the line lighter and darker. Increase that. It's not just one pattern of the line. So that's why we do the hatching. It's a very important technique to create this. So okay, now I'm doing more detail shape. I'll do detail line. So I will erase the back side because when I'm doing the outline, there's some lines not so much accurate. So I erase that. So now I'm working on the shading for the structure. So like the scapular. So this part of the line is very condensed. Sometimes it's going to a line. Sometimes it's going to actually a little face. And sometimes it go to a whole face. So it's very, very subtle. So you need to see the line creates that space. Yeah. Yeah, this technique you have to. I'm telling you this technique, but if mostly people don't know that. You must have do lots of copy from masterpieces. I mean masterpieces, not photos, and you can understand a little bit. But most of the people don't tell you that. Yeah. So now I'm working on the torso, and you can see a very subtlety hatching. That's why the hatching for halftone is very challenging, because you need to know you need to understand the structure and the volume to do like this. So it's not only make it darker, but it's actually make it more solid, especially when the structural part is very much fit to bone system. And here is the bone of the rib cage. We need it very careful, and they also need to very organically combine each other, so it'll serve for both structure and the volume. Here the sound is big because yeah, this part of it is a very key of the work. So, and another thing is that you can see the reflected light here. Don't use the eraser to create that. You have to add more shading for more dark part and leave it into a light thing. That's the very natural reflected light function. So they need lots of practice to handle this. Armpit. So now I'm working on scapular and the shoulder. See that it's a little bit of gray area, but it's very important you must use the hatching. When you use the good hatching, you won't feel like this part become gray. It's more bright. It actually give you more information, and it looks bright. That means it's a good hatching. Same like lots of oil paintings. When you look at the light part, you can see lots of detail, but it still looks very bright, you know. So that means the artist actually controlled or mastered the lighting relation with the inside structure, and use the most smart way to draw or to paint. If you don't know that, this part could be looks very gray and flat. So this is the secret. Yeah, I open this secret to public. I never conservative. I wish everyone can understand it. It's good to remain and also appreciate this traditional art. It's my purpose. But yeah, of course, not everyone think like this, because traditional art, you have to learn. I mean, not to learn from book, but more learn from the practice. And then you know what's the difference between the concept and the actual drawing process and the quality of the work. You need to understand. Okay, you see it's more and more contrasted and more solid. And the mass feeling started to come out. So since this is a demonstration, I'm not putting too much work for creating the details. So only thing is for me is to develop the order from contrasted to less contrasted, and create the relation each other. So I don't need to make it too much dark. So it's about the time concern. So I think I need to make this part more contrasted. And because I made it wrong a bit, so we'll make this part a little more dark. Alright. Yeah, I think I'm done, and I will move the camera to the middle, so that we can take a final look of the work. Okay, move it to the middle. Yeah, so this is the right proportion of the work. Maybe the lighting make it more reflection of the some pencil quality, and it can make it a little bit not so directly shooting the picture. Yeah. See some more darkness on the hand. If if I light on the top, it's a little bit too dark. Okay, good. You see the hand by the signature is very light. Yeah, that's right for the whole relation of the work. It's very further background. Yeah. Okay.